Lieutenant Sarah Malik arrived at the sprawling naval base early in the morning. The sun had just begun to rise over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow on the sleek metal buildings and the rows of ships docked at the pier. She stepped out of the transport vehicle, her boots hitting the pavement with a firm, confident rhythm. Even though she was young and new to this top-secret base, there was something about her presence that made people take notice. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her uniform perfectly pressed, and her eyes alert, scanning the surroundings like a hawk. As she walked toward the main compound, she could hear the low hum of activity all around her. Officers and soldiers were moving briskly, some carrying briefcases, others checking equipment, while groups of personnel huddled together, discussing missions and schedules. Despite the bustle, Sarah's focus remained steady. She had trained for years for this moment, and she knew that first impressions mattered, especially in a place where every move was watched and every action had consequences. Her reputation had preceded her. Though most people at the base had never met her, her record in the Navy was already impressive. She had graduated top of her class in the Commando training program and had earned recognition for completing some of the most challenging assignments in record time. However, Sarah did not boast or draw attention to her achievements. She believed that actions spoke louder than words. Today, she would need every bit of her skill, intelligence, and patience because this base was no ordinary military facility. It was home to the most sensitive operations of the Navy, where only the most elite officers were trusted with classified missions. Walking through the compound, she noticed the subtle dynamics of the base. Officers gave quick nods or polite smiles as she passed, some curious, others indifferent. A few whispered behind their hands, trying to guess who the new recruit might be. Sarah, however, paid them no mind. She understood that in environments like this, there would always be those who underestimated newcomers, especially women in high-risk roles. She was used to it and knew that proving her competence silently was far more effective than arguing or showing off. As she approached the main building, she saw groups of people gathering for the day's briefing. Among them were seasoned officers, men and women who had spent decades in the Navy, many of them battle-hardened and stern. Their expressions were serious, their eyes scanning every face entering the room. Sarah felt a twinge of nervousness, not because she doubted herself, but because she understood the importance of blending in while staying alert. In a place like this, one wrong word or gesture could make someone doubt your abilities before you even had a chance to prove them. Inside the briefing room, the atmosphere was tense but professional. Large screens displayed maps, satellite images, and operational details. Officers spoke in low, precise tones, discussing strategies and mission plans. Some were laughing quietly at jokes that only they understood, while others typed furiously on laptops, cross-checking intelligence reports. Sarah found a quiet corner, placing her bag down and standing at attention, observing everything carefully. She noticed the way certain officers carried themselves, the subtle signs of hierarchy, and the interactions that revealed alliances and rivalries. Every detail was important. In high-stakes operations, understanding people could be as vital as understanding the enemy. Even though she was new, Sarah's mind was sharp and quick. She began to mentally review the briefing materials she had read the night before, cross-referencing them with what she could see in the room. Her training had taught her to always anticipate challenges and to remain ready for anything. She could sense the mission briefing would not just test her knowledge but also her instincts. While others were focused on the obvious details, Sarah had a habit of noticing what people tried to hide. The small hesitations, the subtle expressions, the quiet murmurs that might indicate hidden tensions. As the briefing started, the commanding officers entered the room, their presence commanding immediate respect. The room fell silent, and every eye turned toward them. Sarah straightened her posture, her gaze steady, prepared to take in every word and every subtle cue. Even though she appeared calm, her mind was already working, analyzing, predicting, and preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. By the end of her first hour at the base, it was clear that this environment was unlike any Sarah had encountered before. It was high pressure, high stakes, and unforgiving, but she felt ready. She had spent years training for moments like this, where intelligence, courage, and precision would determine success or failure. As she sat quietly among the seasoned officers, she reminded herself to stay patient, to observe carefully, and to let her skills speak for themselves. Today was just the beginning, and Sarah knew that the real test of her abilities was yet to come. In that quiet determination, there was a hint of mystery that others could not immediately perceive. Lieutenant Sarah Malik was young, yes, and relatively unknown, but beneath her composed exterior lay the mind of a tactical genius and the instincts of a true commando. And in a place like this, that combination would soon reveal itself in ways that no one could predict. The room was buzzing with low conversations when Lieutenant Sarah Malik found her place among the officers. Her presence was quiet but commanding, a subtle contrast to the chatter around her. Everyone was settling in for the day's briefing, exchanging quick nods and polite greetings, but one senior Navy commando couldn't resist breaking the calm with a little joke. His name was Commander James Rourke, a veteran of countless missions, known for his sharp humor and occasional teasing of new recruits. As the officers were reviewing mission maps and satellite images, Rourke turned his attention to Sarah. He leaned back slightly, a mischievous glint in his eyes, and asked her in a teasing tone, "So what's your rank here, Lieutenant? Or are you just here to watch and learn?" His words carried a casual laugh, but the subtle edge in his tone implied he didn't think much of her. Around him, a few other officers chuckled quietly, expecting Sarah to stumble, hesitate, or blush. It was a classic scenario. Rookie meets experienced veteran, and the veteran assumes superiority. Sarah's reaction, however, was nothing like they expected. She didn't flinch, smile awkwardly, or respond with uncertainty. Instead, she stood still, her posture straight and composed, her gaze calm yet alert. For a brief moment, the room seemed to pause. She could feel every eye subtly shifting toward her, curious to see how the young officer would handle the playful challenge. Many underestimated newcomers like her, assuming youth equaled inexperience or weakness. But Sarah had learned long ago that confidence and calmness could speak louder than words. Without breaking her composure, she replied in a steady voice, "Lieutenant Malik, Commander. But my rank doesn't define my role here." Her words were simple, yet they carried an unspoken weight, a quiet authority that immediately made the room notice her differently. The joke, meant to undermine her, instead highlighted her discipline and confidence. Rourke's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in curiosity. He wasn't used to rookies who responded so calmly under pressure, and for the first time, he sensed that this new officer might be more than just another trainee. The tension in the room didn't go unnoticed. Some officers began exchanging glances, whispering quietly to each other, wondering if they had misjudged Sarah. The few who had been laughing now hesitated, unsure whether their humor had crossed a line. Even seasoned veterans like Rourke had to pause and reassess. Sarah's presence was quiet but magnetic, and it subtly reminded everyone that appearances could be deceiving. In environments like this, where every decision could have life or death consequences, underestimating anyone, especially a rookie, could be dangerous. Sarah didn't let the small incident distract her. While others were focused on appearances, she was already observing the room, analyzing behavior, and taking note of interactions. She noticed how certain officers positioned themselves, how some whispered more than others, and how the dynamics hinted at hierarchies, alliances, and subtle rivalries. These details might seem minor to the untrained eye, but Sarah had learned that in military operations, understanding people could be as important as understanding strategy. Every hesitation, every glance, every slight smirk could reveal hidden intentions or potential threats. The mission briefing continued, but now Sarah had established her presence. Commander Rourke, who had meant to joke and perhaps belittle her slightly, now regarded her differently. There was respect, though it was cautious and tinged with curiosity. He realized that this young lieutenant had a keen mind, a calm demeanor, and an ability to command attention without asserting dominance. That combination was rare and powerful, especially in a high-stakes environment where missions required precision, discipline, and quick thinking under pressure. Sarah's training had prepared her for moments like this. In commando school, She had learned that confidence wasn't about boasting or proving oneself verbally. It was about being prepared, observing, and acting decisively when the moment required it. Her composure under Rourke's teasing was a reflection of that training. It also sent a subtle message to the other officers. She was not someone to underestimate, and her presence in this room had a purpose beyond what they could immediately see. While the commando's joke seemed trivial, it was actually a small test. In military settings, interactions like these often reveal character, resilience, and situational awareness. Sarah had passed with flying colors. She didn't just respond. She commanded subtle respect through her quiet confidence. By remaining composed, she turned what was intended as a slight into an opportunity to establish her credibility. Even Rourke, who had been confident in his experience, now found himself intrigued. He wondered, what else could this young officer do that was beyond appearances? The moment also had another effect. It reminded the other officers that hierarchy and rank were only part of the story. In elite operations, competence, observation, and strategic thinking often mattered more than age or tenure. Sarah had demonstrated that in a single interaction, leaving an impression that would linger throughout the briefing. The atmosphere in the room had shifted subtly. Whispers had quieted, laughter had faded, and attention was more focused. The new officer had shown that she could hold her own, even in the presence of veterans. By the time the briefing moved on to the technical details of the mission, Sarah had already positioned herself mentally. She observed the maps, the intelligence reports, and the officer's body language, quietly noting every inconsistency and anomaly. She was ready for the real challenges ahead, not just the mission itself, but the delicate balance of earning respect, navigating egos, and establishing her authority in a room full of seasoned officers. The joking question had been nothing more than a minor ripple, but it had revealed her strength and presence in a way that words alone could not. After the brief moment of tension with Commander Rourke, the room gradually settled into the serious tone of the mission briefing. Lieutenant Sarah Malik remained calm and alert, her eyes scanning every officer, every detail on the screens, and every subtle gesture around her. She understood that this was more than just a regular briefing. This was a gathering where high-level decisions were made, where intelligence was shared, and where the stakes were higher than most people realized. The mission ahead was dangerous, complex, and required absolute precision. One small mistake could cost lives, compromise national security, or allow the enemy to succeed. The briefing was led by Captain Reynolds, a stern, highly respected officer known for his strict discipline and tactical genius. He stood at the front of the room, pointing to large digital maps that showed the maritime region where the operation would take place. The maps were detailed, showing shipping lanes, known smuggling routes, and areas of potential enemy activity. Satellite images and intelligence reports were displayed alongside them, giving a full picture of the threats and challenges the team would face. As the captain spoke, Sarah absorbed every word, analyzing the information in her mind. She was trained to see patterns and connections that others might miss, and her instincts told her that something in the plan required a closer look. The mission was described as a covert operation targeting a notorious maritime smuggling network. The smuggling ring had evaded authorities for years, using fast boats, complex routes, and sophisticated communication methods. The Navy's goal was to intercept their operations without alerting them prematurely. Everyone in the room listened intently, taking notes, asking questions, and planning their roles. While most officers were focused on the logistics, timing, equipment, communication protocols, Sarah's mind was already analyzing potential weaknesses in the operation. She noticed inconsistencies in the intelligence and gaps in the plan that could be exploited by the enemy. As the discussion continued, Sarah observed the officers around her. She could see the subtle differences in experience, attitude, and confidence. Some officers were highly attentive, asking insightful questions, while others seemed distracted or overconfident, relying too heavily on their rank rather than critical thinking. Sarah noted each person carefully. Understanding the people you work with was just as important as understanding the mission. A single misstep or misjudgment from a teammate could jeopardize the entire operation. Captain Reynolds spoke in a calm but commanding tone, explaining the objectives, potential threats, and strategies. He highlighted the importance of secrecy, precision, and coordination. Each officer was expected to perform their role flawlessly, and the plan depended on trust, discipline, and rapid decision-making. Sarah noticed that even though the plan was comprehensive, there were areas where the team might be vulnerable, places where human error, miscommunication, or betrayal could cause serious problems. She made mental notes, preparing herself to act quickly if any of these challenges arose. Throughout the briefing, Sarah's presence did not go unnoticed. The senior officers, including Commander Rourke, kept glancing at her, trying to gauge her understanding and readiness. The earlier interaction with the joking question had already made an impression, but now they saw her focus, her calm analytical approach, and her ability to notice details others were missing. It became clear that this young lieutenant was not just another new recruit. She had the skills, intelligence, and intuition to contribute meaningfully to the operation. Sarah also began to think about the dynamics of the mission itself. She could sense subtle tensions between some officers, slight rivalries, and unspoken disagreements about strategy. These interpersonal factors, while invisible to most, could affect decision-making and the success of the operation. She realized that part of her role would be not just to follow orders, but to navigate these dynamics carefully, ensuring that the team remained coordinated and focused on the mission objectives. As the briefing progressed, the officers discussed communication protocols, emergency contingencies, and the chain of command during the operation. Sarah's mind worked rapidly, cross-referencing the information with her prior knowledge and training. She considered alternative strategies, possible outcomes, and the actions of the enemy. Her training as a commando had taught her to anticipate moves, not just react. She mentally mapped scenarios in which things could go wrong, preparing herself to make decisions quickly and effectively if the situation demanded it. By the time the briefing was halfway through, Sarah had already identified critical points that others had overlooked. She noticed a few weak links in the smuggling network that could be exploited, inconsistencies in the intelligence reports, and potential risks posed by internal mistakes or miscommunication. Though she did not speak up immediately, she filed these observations carefully in her mind, ready to raise them at the right moment. Timing was important. Speaking out too early could disrupt the flow of the briefing, but waiting too long could cost valuable time during the operation. The tension in the room grew as Captain Reynolds emphasized the stakes of the mission. This was not a routine operation. The smuggling network was known to have connections with dangerous criminal and terrorist organizations. Every move had to be precise, and every officer needed to perform at their highest level. Sarah felt a sense of anticipation mixed with focus. She was ready. She knew that her training, instincts, and careful observation could make the difference between success and failure. By the end of the briefing, it was clear that while the mission was complex and dangerous, Sarah was prepared for the challenges ahead. She had carefully analyzed the situation, observed the team, and identified both strengths and weaknesses. Her mind was sharp, her instincts alert, and her presence quietly commanding. She understood that in moments like this, preparation, observation, and anticipation were more valuable than words or bravado. While others were focused on logistics and routine procedures, Sarah was already thinking several steps ahead, ready to handle whatever surprises the mission might bring. The briefing was reaching a critical point. Captain Reynolds was outlining the roles and responsibilities of each officer, explaining the delicate nature of the operation and emphasizing the importance of absolute secrecy. Every officer in the room listened intently, absorbing the tactical details, the potential threats, and the communication protocols they would need to follow. The atmosphere was tense yet focused. This was not a moment for mistakes or distractions. Lieutenant Sarah Malik remained calm, sitting straight and alert, her eyes moving between the captain, the maps, and the officers around her. She had been paying attention since the beginning, analyzing every word, every gesture, and every subtle shift in the room. She noticed the flow of information, how some officers spoke with authority, while others hesitated or exchanged quick, secretive glances. In her mind, she was connecting dots, identifying patterns, and preparing herself for any eventuality. It was at this point that Captain Reynolds turned to Sarah. Perhaps it was instinct, or perhaps he simply wanted to make sure she was fully integrated into the team. "Lieutenant Malik," he said in a firm voice, "please confirm your code name for the record." The request was straightforward, procedural, and intended to be simple. Most officers would respond with a standard code name, something on file, a routine confirmation of their role. Everyone expected a normal answer, nothing more. Sarah paused for a brief moment, her expression neutral, her posture unchanged. Then, in a calm, steady voice, she spoke the code. But this was no ordinary code name. It was a secret naval code, one known only to the highest clearance officers, the kind that marked a person as more than just another lieutenant. It was a signal that she had been entrusted with intelligence, responsibilities, and authority far beyond what anyone else in the room had anticipated. The reaction was instantaneous. The room seemed to freeze. Officers glanced at each other in shock, trying to process what they had just heard. Commander Rourke, who had jokingly questioned her rank earlier, felt a jolt of surprise and disbelief. He had assumed Sarah was just a young, capable officer, nothing more. But this code revealed something entirely different. She was far more experienced, far more trusted, and far more dangerous in the professional sense than anyone had realized. Captain Reynolds, normally composed and unshakable, went white. The color drained from his face as he realized the implications of the code. This young lieutenant, whom he had seen as new and relatively untested, was actually a covert operative with authority and access at levels far beyond the others present. He understood immediately that her role in the mission was critical, that her insight, judgment, and decisions could alter the outcome of the operation. A wave of respect, and a hint of caution, passed over him as he regained his composure. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken realization. Other officers shifted uneasily, sensing that something significant had just occurred. Some tried to mask their surprise with professional restraint, while others exchanged quiet whispers, unable to hide the astonishment in their eyes. Sarah remained composed, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the reactions around her. She had expected this response. It was precisely why she had used the code at that moment. Timing was essential, and revealing her authority subtly, yet decisively, ensured that everyone understood her capabilities without creating unnecessary alarm. This revelation changed the dynamics in the room immediately. Officers who had previously underestimated Sarah now saw her in a new light. The joking comments and casual doubts that had greeted her earlier were replaced with cautious attention and quiet respect. People began to understand that she was not there merely to follow orders or learn from others. She was there to lead, guide, and intervene if necessary, leveraging her expertise to ensure the mission's success. Sarah's composure during this moment further solidified her presence. She did not gloat, did not assert dominance overtly, and did not demand recognition. Instead, she let her actions speak, demonstrating that her authority and skills were already embedded in the way she observed, analyzed, and responded. Her calm, quiet confidence contrasted sharply with the reactions of those around her, making her an unspoken center of attention and influence in the room. The command structure subtly shifted. Captain Reynolds now understood that while he remained in charge of the mission, Sarah had access to information, protocols, and insights that could override standard procedures if the situation demanded it. This unspoken recognition created a silent agreement between them, a mutual understanding that her role was exceptional, that her judgment was to be trusted implicitly, and that she had the power to act decisively when necessary. In the minutes following the code's revelation, the officers returned to the briefing, but the energy in the room had changed. There was now a heightened sense of awareness, a careful observation of Sarah as she silently reviewed the maps, the intelligence, and the plans. It was clear to everyone that she was not just participating. She was actively thinking, analyzing, and preparing for contingencies. Her ability to anticipate problems, identify vulnerabilities, and act with precision was immediately evident to the trained eye. As the briefing continued, Sarah began to notice small details others had overlooked. A potential communication gap, a minor inconsistency in the enemy's reported movements, and subtle vulnerabilities in the planned operation. These were details that, if ignored, could jeopardize the mission. Yet Sarah, having established her authority and presence, knew that she could quietly influence decisions, correct mistakes, and ensure the operation proceeded with maximum efficiency and safety. By the end of the session, it was clear to all present that Lieutenant Sarah Malik was no ordinary officer. The secret code had revealed her true status, and her composed reaction had demonstrated her professionalism, intelligence, and readiness. She had turned a simple procedural moment into a defining statement of her capabilities, setting the stage for the challenges and high-stakes decisions that lay ahead. The mission briefing had concluded, and now it was time for the officers to transition from planning to preparation. Lieutenant Sarah Malik remained calm, moving with a quiet confidence that drew subtle attention from those around her. While others were still digesting the implications of the secret code she had revealed, Sarah had already begun analyzing the operational plan, identifying potential weaknesses, and mentally preparing for what lay ahead. It was clear that her presence was no longer just noted, it was respected, even if some officers were not yet willing to admit it openly. As the team began organizing their equipment, checking communications, and reviewing maps, Sarah quietly observed each officer's movements. She noted who was methodical, who relied on experience, and who tended to overlook small but critical details. Her eyes were like a scanner, absorbing information about people as well as the mission. While the room buzzed with activity, Sarah's mind worked in complete focus, mapping out strategies, potential problems, and contingencies that others had not considered. Her first demonstration of her hidden abilities came almost immediately. A team member was struggling to set up a secure communication channel, a process that, if done incorrectly, could compromise the mission. Without making a scene, Sarah moved over, her fingers quickly checking the settings, correcting errors, and confirming encryption protocols. The team member glanced at her in surprise, momentarily stunned by her efficiency. Sarah offered a calm, professional smile and returned to her own preparations. It was a simple act, but it set the tone. She was capable, prepared, and observant. Over the next few hours, Sarah's insights became increasingly evident. She began pointing out subtle flaws in the mission plan that others had overlooked. For instance, she noticed a minor gap in the security perimeter where the enemy could potentially spot the team's approach. She suggested small, precise adjustments that would reinforce their position without drawing unnecessary attention. Each observation was presented with clarity, confidence, and without arrogance. Her ability to identify critical details that others missed immediately enhanced her credibility. While Sarah's contributions were practical, they also revealed something deeper. Her analytical mind was paired with instinctive intuition. She could anticipate enemy movements based on patterns in intelligence reports, the layout of the terrain, and the timing of communications. This skill was rare and incredibly valuable, especially in high-stakes missions where one miscalculation could endanger the entire team. Officers began to pay closer attention to her recommendations, realizing that her calm, quiet demeanor masked a highly trained tactical mind. Even her physical presence on the base was commanding in subtle ways. When navigating tight spaces, checking equipment, or moving between teams, she carried herself with efficiency and purpose. Every movement was precise, controlled, and deliberate, reflecting years of commando training and experience. It was clear to observers that Sarah was not just competent. She was exceptional. Some officers, initially skeptical, now watched her closely, silently acknowledging that her abilities could make the difference between mission success and failure. The dynamic between Sarah and Commander Rourke shifted as well. The same officer who had jokingly questioned her rank now approached her with respect, listening intently to her suggestions and occasionally seeking her insight. Rourke, seasoned and experienced, recognized that Sarah's skill set complemented his own, and that she was an asset to the operation in ways he had not anticipated. It was a quiet acknowledgement of her abilities, a change in perception that reinforced her growing authority within the team. As preparations continued, Sarah also demonstrated her skill in reading people, not just situations. She could sense tension, hesitation, and even hidden doubts among the officers. For example, one officer appeared overconfident, underestimating the complexity of the mission. Sarah noticed subtle signs: the slight smirk, the relaxed posture, the quick dismissive gestures, and understood that if unchecked, this attitude could jeopardize the team. She adjusted her approach subtly, offering guidance indirectly, ensuring the officer followed the proper protocol without confrontation. This ability to influence others discreetly showed her leadership skills and emotional intelligence. Her contributions extended beyond immediate operational tasks. Sarah began organizing minor but important details that no one else had considered, like backup communication protocols, alternative routes for extraction, and emergency contingencies in case the team encountered unexpected resistance. These preparations were meticulous and practical, demonstrating foresight and preparation that could prevent catastrophic outcomes. Her actions were noticed by Captain Reynolds, who silently observed her work, recognizing the depth of her expertise and the quiet leadership she brought to the team. By the end of the day, it was clear that Sarah Malik's abilities were no longer hidden. The initial underestimation of her capabilities had shifted completely. Officers who had once doubted her were now seeking her insight, following her lead, and observing her actions for cues on how to proceed. Her calm, professional demeanor, paired with her intelligence, tactical skill, and perceptive observation, had transformed her presence from that of a newcomer to a key figure in the mission. What made Sarah remarkable was not just her technical skill or strategic mind, but the way she combined them with quiet authority. She did not need to assert herself aggressively. Her competence, calmness, and precision naturally commanded respect. She was a living example of the principle that true leadership often comes from actions, not words. By the time the team wrapped up their preparations, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. There was a newfound respect for Sarah, an unspoken acknowledgement that she was not just a participant, but a leader in her own right, someone whose insight, judgment, and abilities could change the course of the operation. The officers understood, even if they could not yet articulate it, that the young lieutenant they had once underestimated was now central to their success. As the operation preparations moved forward, Lieutenant Sarah Malik's mind remained sharp and alert. While most officers focused on equipment checks, communication protocols, and strategy rehearsals, Sarah's attention was drawn to subtle irregularities in the information flow. It began with small things: communications that seemed slightly delayed, data reports that didn't fully align, and minor inconsistencies in intelligence files. To most people, these details would have seemed insignificant, easily dismissed. But Sarah had a trained eye and instinctive awareness, and to her, these anomalies were warning signs. She began analyzing the patterns in the reports carefully. Something felt off, and she trusted her instincts. Over the years, she had learned that in operations like this, danger did not only come from the enemy, it often came from within. There were times when information was leaked, plans were sabotaged, or personnel acted in self-interest, all of which could put the entire mission at risk. Sarah's experience taught her to remain vigilant, to anticipate betrayal, and to act decisively before small issues escalated into catastrophe. Over the next few days, as the team conducted rehearsals and simulations, Sarah noticed more concerning signs. One officer, in particular, seemed to be asking questions that were unnecessary for their role, probing into areas beyond their clearance. At first, it appeared innocent, perhaps just curiosity. But as she observed the officer's behavior, furtive glances, whispered phone calls during breaks, subtle hesitation when reporting information, Sarah grew increasingly suspicious. Her mind started connecting the dots. The inconsistencies in the data, the misaligned reports, and now this officer's unusual behavior. The picture that was forming was alarming. There was a mole in the team, someone feeding information to the enemy. Sarah knew she had to act carefully. Direct confrontation could be dangerous, not only for her but for the mission. The mole had to be caught discreetly, ensuring that the operation remained uncompromised while exposing the traitor. She began formulating a plan, leveraging her position and the trust she had quietly earned among her colleagues. Her approach was methodical. She would set subtle traps, test reactions, and observe carefully without alerting the potential saboteur. Timing, precision, and discretion were critical. Using her expertise in intelligence and counterespionage, Sarah began placing controlled pieces of information where only the mole could access them. She tracked responses, monitored communications, and watched for signs of suspicious activity. Each step was calculated, designed to provoke a reaction that would reveal the traitor without exposing the team or the mission. It was a delicate balance, and Sarah's ability to remain patient and observant was key. She knew that a single misstep could compromise the operation or alert the mole to her suspicions. As the days passed, Sarah continued to gather evidence quietly. She observed patterns in the mole's movements, noting which pieces of information they accessed and how they reacted to changes in plans. Each observation confirmed her suspicions. Someone within their own ranks was working against them. The gravity of the situation was clear. If the mole's activities were not stopped, the mission could fail and lives could be lost. But Sarah was prepared. She had faced high-pressure situations before, and she understood that intelligence and strategy were as powerful as weapons in determining the outcome of a mission. To strengthen her position, Sarah also coordinated discreetly with Captain Reynolds, sharing her observations in a way that did not reveal the mole's identity to the wider team. Reynolds, now fully aware of Sarah's capabilities and judgment, trusted her instincts. Together, they planned to catch the traitor at the precise moment, ensuring that the mole could be neutralized without jeopardizing the operation. This silent partnership demonstrated the growing trust and mutual respect between the captain and the lieutenant. Sarah's methodical approach extended beyond just observation. She also prepared contingencies for how to respond if the mole took unexpected actions. She mapped out alternative strategies for the mission, rerouted critical information, and ensured that sensitive details were secured. Her preparations were meticulous, reflecting her understanding of both human behavior and operational strategy. She knew that in situations like this, foresight could be the difference between success and disaster. Finally, after days of careful monitoring and subtle testing, the mole began to reveal themselves. The controlled information Sarah had placed acted as bait, and the reactions she had been observing became increasingly obvious. The officer she had suspected could no longer hide their intentions. Sarah's careful planning had worked. The mole was unwittingly exposing their betrayal, confirming what she had sensed all along. Even in this tense moment, Sarah remained calm and collected. She had anticipated this outcome and was ready to act. The next step would be decisive. She would neutralize the threat without drawing attention or risking the mission. Her preparation, observation, and intelligence had brought her to this point, demonstrating not only her skill as a commando but her brilliance as a strategist. By the end of this stage, it was clear that Sarah had once again proven her value. She had identified a hidden threat, prepared a precise plan, and positioned herself to act decisively. The other officers, still unaware of the mole's identity, could not fully grasp the scope of her achievement, but her actions had ensured that the mission could proceed safely. In high-stakes operations like this, Sarah's calm intelligence, careful planning, and ability to detect hidden dangers made her an indispensable asset. The day of the mission had arrived, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. The team moved like a well-oiled machine, every officer focused on their role, every piece of equipment checked and rechecked. Lieutenant Sarah Malik, as always, remained calm, her eyes sharp and her mind alert. She had studied the operation inside out, memorized the terrain, analyzed the enemy's behavior, and, most importantly, prepared for the possibility of betrayal within the team. Today, everything would be put to the test. From the moment the team boarded the boats and slipped into the shadows of the night, Sarah's instincts guided every move. She led by example, moving quietly, efficiently, and deliberately, while also observing the behavior of her teammates. The operation required stealth, coordination, and split-second decision-making. Any mistake could expose them to the enemy, and Sarah's experience allowed her to anticipate potential pitfalls before they became threats. Almost immediately, subtle signs appeared that confirmed her earlier suspicions about the mole. One officer, who had seemed competent and confident during rehearsals, began taking actions that were slightly off, hesitating at critical moments, miscommunicating instructions, and appearing unusually interested in certain strategic points that did not concern them. Sarah noted every detail, her mind racing through possibilities, planning contingencies, and preparing to act without alerting the entire team. As they approached the target area, Sarah subtly altered the mission parameters. She rerouted certain paths, adjusted communication protocols, and ensured that the critical intelligence she had identified earlier remained secure. All of these actions were minor on the surface, but they were carefully calculated to test the mole, restrict their access to sensitive information, and create an opportunity for confrontation without endangering the rest of the team. The operation proceeded smoothly, the team moving like shadows across the water. They reached the designated location and began executing their plan, intercepting smuggling operations with precision. Yet Sarah's eyes were constantly scanning, not just the surroundings, but her fellow officers. Every gesture, every hesitation, every misstep was noted. Her training had taught her that a single lapse of judgment or a hidden betrayal could undo even the most meticulously planned mission. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The mole, unaware that Sarah had been tracking their behavior, made a move to compromise the mission. It was subtle but unmistakable. A communication attempt, a deviation from the assigned route, an action that could have revealed the team's position to the enemy. Sarah recognized it immediately. Without hesitation, she moved into action. Her response was swift, precise, and silent, ensuring that no one else noticed the danger until it was neutralized. She intercepted the mole quietly, using a combination of tactical skill, physical control, and psychological awareness. Sarah restrained the officer, preventing them from taking further harmful actions, while simultaneously signaling the rest of the team to continue the mission without alarm. Her movements were efficient, almost effortless, a testament to years of commando training and battlefield experience. The mole realized, too late, that they had been outsmarted and trapped by someone far more capable than they had anticipated. As the confrontation unfolded, the rest of the team, including Commander Rourke and Captain Reynolds, became aware that something critical had happened. They noticed the change in Sarah's demeanor, the calm authority, the decisive action, the subtle command that she wielded without raising her voice. The mole was neutralized quickly and efficiently, with minimal disruption to the mission, thanks to Sarah's foresight and preparation. The team continued their operation, now even more vigilant and coordinated, guided by Sarah's quiet leadership. The interception of the smuggling network proceeded flawlessly. Every officer followed their role, every plan executed with precision, and every potential threat mitigated. The successful neutralization of the mole had not only protected the mission but also prevented the enemy from gaining any advantage. Captain Reynolds, who had been observing Sarah closely, finally acknowledged her brilliance in a subtle but meaningful way. He understood that her role had been pivotal, not just in executing the mission, but in protecting the team from internal threats. Her calm composure, analytical mind, and tactical skill had ensured that the operation succeeded where it could have failed. Commander Rourke, too, silently recognized the depth of her capabilities, no longer viewing her as a newcomer but as an indispensable officer whose judgment could be trusted in the highest-stakes situations. Throughout the mission, Sarah remained vigilant. She continued to anticipate potential problems, adapting strategies in real time, and ensuring that no further surprises jeopardized their objective. Her presence inspired confidence in her team, even if they did not fully understand the extent of her planning and foresight. In high-pressure operations like this, leadership often manifests quietly, through action rather than words, and Sarah embodied that principle perfectly. By the time the mission concluded, the smuggling operation had been dismantled, the team was safe, and the mole was securely in custody. What had begun as a routine operation had transformed into a high-stakes test of skill, intelligence, and vigilance. Sarah Malik had navigated every challenge with precision, demonstrating her extraordinary ability to anticipate danger, act decisively, and protect both the mission and her team. The aftermath of the mission left the officers in awe. They had witnessed her capability firsthand, not just her physical skills, but her strategic mind, her keen instincts, and her calm authority under pressure. The young lieutenant who had once been underestimated had proven herself to be the linchpin of the operation, the quiet force whose presence ensured success. From this point on, there was no doubt. Lieutenant Sarah Malik was a remarkable officer, a true commando, and a leader whose skills commanded respect in every situation. The operation had finally ended, and a calm settled over the naval base that had been tense for days. The mission had been a success. Every objective completed, the smuggling network dismantled, and the internal threat neutralized. Yet, amidst the relief and quiet celebration, Lieutenant Sarah Malik remained composed, her face calm, her posture straight, and her mind already reviewing every detail of the operation. While others were still processing the events, congratulating each other, and exchanging stories of narrow escapes, Sarah quietly reflected on her role. Her contributions had been pivotal. From the moment she joined the mission, she had observed, analyzed, and anticipated every possible challenge. She had identified the mole, set a precise trap, and neutralized the threat without endangering the team. Her tactical skills, intelligence, and foresight had ensured that the mission proceeded without disruption, despite the complex dynamics of internal betrayal and enemy threats. Yet, true to her nature, she did not seek attention or accolades. She had acted because it was necessary, because it was her duty, and because she understood the stakes. The other officers were beginning to recognize the depth of her capabilities. Commander Rourke, who had once joked about her rank, now approached her with a mix of respect and awe. "Lieutenant Malik," he said quietly, "I underestimated you. You didn't just participate. You carried the mission in ways I never expected." There was no condescension, no casual tone, just genuine acknowledgement. His words reflected the shift in perception that had taken place over the course of the operation. Sarah had proven herself not only as a skilled officer but as a quiet leader whose judgment could be trusted implicitly. Captain Reynolds, still processing the events, nodded at her in a way that conveyed deep respect. In his experience, he had worked with countless officers, veterans, and specialists, but few had demonstrated the combination of calm authority, tactical brilliance, and subtle leadership that Sarah had exhibited. Her ability to observe without distraction, anticipate threats before they became crises, and act decisively had been crucial to the operation's success. The captain understood that her contributions could not be measured merely by rank or seniority. They were measured by results, precision, and the lives saved. Despite the recognition from her superiors, Sarah remained humble. She did not seek praise or attempt to elevate herself above her teammates. Instead, she focused on ensuring that every officer felt confident in their role, that every plan had been executed properly, and that any lingering threats had been addressed. Her quiet leadership inspired confidence among her peers, even if they were not fully aware of the extent of her planning and intervention. They trusted her decisions instinctively, sensing that her calm, composed presence was a stabilizing force in high-pressure situations. In the following hours, the team gathered to debrief. Officers shared their experiences, discussed the challenges they had faced, and highlighted moments where quick thinking or teamwork had saved the mission. When Sarah's contributions were acknowledged, it was not in the form of grand speeches or public accolades, but through sincere nods, appreciative glances, and subtle acknowledgments. Her colleagues had seen firsthand the skill, intelligence, and leadership she had demonstrated, and their respect for her grew naturally. The young lieutenant who had once been underestimated was now recognized as the linchpin of the operation. Even the mole's capture had further elevated her status in the eyes of the command. Neutralizing an internal threat required precision, intelligence, and discretion, all qualities that Sarah had displayed flawlessly. By identifying the traitor without alarming the rest of the team, she had ensured that the mission could proceed without chaos, preserving both the operation's success and the safety of her colleagues. Her actions demonstrated that leadership was not about asserting authority but about understanding the situation, anticipating threats, and guiding others effectively, even from a quiet position. As the debriefing concluded, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the early moments at the base, the subtle jokes and doubts cast by experienced officers, and the initial skepticism about her abilities. None of that mattered now. She had proven, not through words, but through action, that skill, preparation, and calm decisiveness were more important than rank, age, or appearance. Her journey was a reminder that true competence and courage often revealed themselves quietly, in the moments when others were focused on the obvious or distracted by ego and expectation. Later, as the base returned to its routine, Sarah walked through the corridors with quiet confidence. Officers and fellow commandos passed her, some giving nods of respect, others silently acknowledging her presence. She had earned their trust not through assertion, but through consistent action, precision, and intelligence. Her achievements were now part of the mission's story, and while she would not seek recognition, those who had witnessed her skill understood her value. In that quiet, understated way, Sarah Malik's heroism was cemented. She had turned skepticism into respect, danger into opportunity, and observation into action. Her calm, collected approach had prevented disaster, ensured success, and inspired confidence in everyone around her. The operation had ended, but her reputation as a brilliant, disciplined, and resourceful officer had only begun to spread. By the end of the day, the young lieutenant who had once been underestimated stood as a symbol of competence and quiet leadership. She had demonstrated that true authority came not from words or rank, but from the ability to think ahead, act decisively, and remain calm under pressure. Her presence had altered the course of the mission, protected her team, and ensured success against both external and internal threats. The respect she earned was well-deserved, and although she remained humble, it was clear to everyone that Sarah Malik was a remarkable officer, a true leader, and a quiet hero whose impact would not soon be forgotten.